r/legal advice. Demamido says, neighbor demanding we pay $4,000 for building a fence after they build one. Can they force us to pay? I'm located in Kansas. A little over a year ago, new neighbors moved in next door and immediately built a fence. I thought this was great because I have been wanting to fence the yard, and because I rent I asked the landlord for approval and they had no problem with it. When they told us about their plans, we told them that we just rent and didn't know where the property line was, and that was the end of that. They also never informed our landlord. A month after their fence was completed, and we started planning our own fence. Because one side of the yard was already fenced, we only had to fence the back and a small portion of the front that connected to their side. With approval from the landlord and permits from the city, we built the fence, but made sure to not actually connect to this. As we were cementing in posts, the neighbor came over screaming at us because we were building a fence and were going to be using their fence. They actually demanded we make a second fence along this so that we could not use it. Even mentioned how they spent $12,000 on it and it wasn't fair. At this point I was getting pissed and asked them for their property survey, since according to the city property line maps show they were clearly on our side of the property line. Of course, they did not bother getting one and neither did we. After they left we finished up, and the next day his wife comes over as we are finishing up and lets us know that they would allow us to use their fence until they decide to move, at which point they would get a survey done. Okay, cool, now we are done with all this BS nonsense. During the next year they let their fence go to crap and didn't weatherproof or stain it, and it looked like crap compared to ours. Last week we get a call from our landlord that they wrote a letter demanding we give them $4,000 plus damages because we built a fence without notifying them. On top of that, they had someone come and power wash and put stain on all the sides, but left the side we face alone. Seemed to go out of their way to not even ask enter our yard to do that side. Edit, in my opinion they did this to claim damages for not having access to our side of the yard. Can they actually force us to pay this? The landlord even said they are acting like idiots, but we're going to check with the city and let us know what to do. Teveretrinald says, can they actually force us to pay this? No. If they were not replacing an existing shared fence, then your landowner owes them nothing. You, as a tenant, are just not involved. Vamarine says, depending on state law, that may be an inaccurate statement. Many states mandate splitting of cost on shared fencing when you utilize it. Iptech says, so in some states you can build a fence and force your neighbors to pay for part of it? Nativamasol says, you don't own the property, they have no claim against you. It would be against the landlord. Romcomtum2 says, right, the only response from op should be, oh well, better notify my landlord. Full stop. Inevitable P40-16 says, they did notify the landlord. It says the landlord told them the neighbors wrote a demand letter. The landlord is probably just letting them know, but it seems he's taking care of it since he's checking with the city. They have a decent landlord who's handling this mess. Glitteria Stranger says, why are you paying for a fence as renters? They need to take this up with the property owner and not you. S-Peeps says, yeah, that blew my mind. Like I'm going to pay for a fence for my landlord, haha. Screveravington says, many landlords will allow renters to make improvements to the property for a reduction in rent, but yes, the fence issue is 100% the landlord's problem. Chicken Lunch says, they spent $12k on a fence and didn't even use treated lumber or cedar? Our treated pine fence has been up for 12 years and it's starting to show age. No way should a fence look bad after 1 year. Quote opposite 6511 says, you are renting, why would you be responsible, and why would you build a fence on a rental property? 2002 Black M says, A lot of people will demand something. Wait until you, or more likely your landlord, are sued, then deal with it. r/legal advice. Fishy Pudding says, I'm moving my GF out of her abusive home. Should I get an escort by law enforcement? Hello everyone. I apologize if this is not the place to be posting this. I 21 male am planning to move my currently pregnant girlfriend 19 female out of her parents' house very shortly. I'm going to leave out any details, but her family is incredibly abusive. Her parents are both alcoholics and threatened me at gunpoint the first time I met them. They've put hands on her multiple times. Nobody knows about the pregnancy or about the plan to move her, except us and my parents. My question is, would it be advisable to ask for some kind of escort or law enforcement presence, just in case things were to get out of hand and or violent? Is that even something I could do? I'm extremely concerned that somebody could get hurt, including our baby, as these people are belligerent and not above violence. Any advice would be appreciated. I'm incredibly stressed over the whole thing, as is she. Aghast Cornichan says, most law enforcement agencies will provide an officer or two for a few minutes of civil standby to keep the peace, while a person in a domestic landlord/tenant dispute collects their personal belongings from their home. But they aren't going to be able to give you more than 10 to 20 minutes. You aren't going to be able to have them wait for her to pack, or expect them to participate in settling any disputes over the ownership of personal property. She may wish to get some advice from a DV shelter to help focus her planning, including figuring out how to get critical hidden financial documents and how to obtain a restraining order in a hurry if one becomes necessary. Fishy Pudding says, at present time all her important documentation and essential items are secured and already moved out of the house. Somebody else mentioned a civil standby and I'm thinking I will go for that route, as we really only need a few minutes for her to grab some last minute things as well as her cat and leave. Thank you for the advice. Mzope says, cats are property. If there's a dispute, cops almost assuredly won't step in to help and won't force the parents to turn the cat over to you. It's no different, legally, than her wanting to pick up a PlayStation from the home. If there's a dispute about the cat, the place to settle that dispute is court, and then it's likely you'll only get the value of the cat and not the cat itself. For optimal success, cat should be moved on the sly. Redditosa1211 says, it sounds like you should stay away from this, and that she might check to see if the local Lee will do a civil standby with her. Fishy Pudding says, what exactly is a civil standby? Redditosa1211 says, a law enforcement officer present while she moves her stuff out. Dazzling Note 6245 says, have her reach out to your area's domestic violence assistance office. They are all different and offer different services like counseling and advice. They should have a relationship with law enforcement and will know what help is available. They sometimes have advocates that will attend court hearings etc. for support, like if she needs a restraining order. They can also help with her plan of escape. Measurement Mobile 747 says, it's great that you are thinking ahead. Having law enforcement size is one idea. If there is a close family member, adult, to be a calming presence, that would be helpful. I assume this move has been announced. It's important that the parents can't make false claims about this being a kidnapping or abduction. r/legal advice. Noadvok3840 says, my flight experienced a fume event. This morning my flight from Chicago experienced a fume event on the tarmac before taking off. Essentially, the cabin was filled with toxic gas, and we spent 25 minutes sitting at the gate waiting to deboard the aircraft. Many passengers including myself became lightheaded, nauseous, and paramedics were called to evaluate ill passengers at the gate. Today I'm still lightheaded, basically feel high. I'm sober and have been for years, frankly pretty pissed off that an airline can essentially poison a group of people and issue a corporate apology. What's worse is this seems like a very difficult and literally intangible, it's gas, area to navigate in terms of proving health side effects or damages. If I or anyone else experiences short or long-term necrological health problems from an event like this, breathing in toxic gases, I'm wondering what, if any, recourse is available. I specifically heard the pilot say to the paramedics that we were in a toxic environment, and to make matters worse, the flight crew seemed to have no idea what to do when the fumes entered the cabin. The crew couldn't get us deboarded in a timely fashion, and we essentially sat there for a half hour while they fumbled around trying to determine a course of action. I have been going back and forth about this in my head, and I don't know what, if any, legal action is available to me in this situation. As a pedestrian with no knowledge of what I breathed in, or any idea of short of long-term impacts to my health, I'm frustrated by simply lacking the vocabulary to even begin a legal complaint. Lastly, I'm really not the type to try to sue someone over spilled milk, but to me this event seemed to go beyond the realm of the risks passengers reasonably agree to when flying. The cabin was filled with a horrible odor which burned the nose and eyes, likely was burnt oil or jet fuel, based on a brief search, and we were then forced to sit in an unventilated cabin for 30+ minutes, while the captain basically panicked. And if I, and others, are sole, that's fine. Just wanted to ask anyone here in the event that there is a reasonable course of action. Redditosa1211 says, why did you delete and repost this? Your answer remains, yes. If you experience substantive neurological harm from this event, you should talk to a lawyer. And you can complain to the FAA if you don't believe this flight crew acted competently in the face of a problem. The reasonable course of action is to get medical care. If you have no problems, I'd probably ask the airline to pay for my care. I'd not, obviously, go to the mattresses over my $50 copay. If you have problems, go to a lawyer. Noadvuk3840 says, the mod team told me that I couldn't reference specific parties in the post, in this case the airline, so I removed those in this new post. I appreciate your advice. In the terminal, the medics took my blood pressure and basically sent me on my way. Not that I expected them to do anything. I guess that's my concern. I'm happy to go to my GP, but the situation is such a corner case that I don't really even know what to say, or what they would say. The airline didn't tell us what we were exposed to, or what to expect. So I have basically no vocabulary to even begin to approach it from pedestrian level other than plain filled with fumes, and I feel bad now regardless. Thank you for taking the time to help. Redditosa1211 says, the medics took my blood pressure and basically sent me on my way. Good news. It sounds like you passed the first bar of nothing to see here. I'm happy to go to my GP, but the situation is such a corner case that I don't really even know what to say. I'd say I was on an airplane that had a fume event and the symptoms I'm experiencing are. This need not be complicated. The airline didn't tell us what we were exposed to, or what to expect. There's a pretty good chance they don't know. Duspini says, your recourse will largely depend on your actual injuries, if any. Lastly, I'm really not the type to try to sue someone over spilled milk, but to me this event seemed to go beyond the realm of the risks passengers reasonably agree to when flying. You agree to board a piece of complex equipment, which may fail in unexpected ways, and which may injure you in the process. I don't think anyone's overly surprised by that, though they might object to the framing. The worst case scenario that you knowingly undertake when you board a plane is a crash due to factors beyond the control of the crew or the airline. For example, the airline is obligated, by law, to undertake steps to manage the known risks of air transport. That includes obligations with respect to maintenance, crew training, equipment certification, and on and on and on. However, they are not obligated to reduce those risks to zero, and you have no recourse against the airline yourself on the sole basis that you experienced an adverse event while flying. If you believe that the That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.